Jack Nicholson is legendary for his chaotic, fearless grin, but behind Hollywood's most famous smile lies the chilling aftermath of a silent psychological earthquake. In 1974, a routine investigation unsealed a hidden archive, instantly rewriting every single memory of his childhood and shattering the family he trusted. Instead of a public breakdown, Nicholson retreated behind a wall of absolute silence, refusing to answer one ultimate question for 52 years. He shut out his past, ignored frantic pleas for DNA tests, and let potential answers die in the grave. How does a superstar carry a completely fabricated identity without ever cracking? What did they actually find in those dusty records that permanently silenced a rebel? In August 1974, Jack Nicholson was 37 years old and sitting on top of the world. His starring role as private detective Jake Gittes in Chinatown had solidified his position as the most celebrated actor of his generation. He had money, acclaim, and an effortless charisma that dominated Hollywood. But far away from the glitz of Los Angeles, inside the research archives of Time magazine in New York, a team of fact-checkers was quietly pulling on a loose thread in his past that would unravel his entire reality. Time was preparing a major cover story on Hollywood's newest king. As standard journalistic practice, researchers cross-referenced public records, birth registries, and county archives in New Jersey to verify basic biographical details about his childhood. That was when they stumbled upon a jarring contradiction. Official documents showed that the woman Jack had spent 37 years calling his mother Ethel Mae Nicholson was legally his grandmother. John Nicholson, the man he believed to be his father, was his grandfather. And the woman he had grown up loving as his vibrant older sister, June Frances Nicholson, was actually his biological mother. The journalists knew they held an explosive bombshell. Before publishing, the lead researcher placed a direct telephone call to Jack Nicholson on the set of his next project. When the reporter laid out the official records and asked him directly to address the discrepancy, Jack was completely stunned. Denying the claim on the spot, he snapped angrily at the caller, "You're out of your mind. If you print that garbage, I'll sue your magazine into non-existence." He slammed down the phone, shaken to his core. Struggling to maintain his composure, Jack immediately reached out to his family in New Jersey to demand answers. But the only people who could give him the absolute truth were gone. June, his biological mother, who had posed as his older sister, had died of cancer in 1963. Ethel Mae, the grandmother who had raised him as her own son, had passed away in 1970. The women who had crafted his reality had taken the truth to their graves. Eventually, Jack managed to reach his remaining Aunt Lorraine, the only living relative who knew the full story. Over an emotional telephone call, she confirmed the unbelievable findings of the Time researchers. June had gotten pregnant out of wedlock in late 1936 at the age of 17 while working as a showgirl. To protect June's budding career and shield the family from the crushing social stigma of an illegitimate birth in a conservative 1930s Catholic environment, Ethel Mae stepped in. She made a pact with the family to claim the newborn baby as her own, raising young Jack to believe that his teenage biological mother was simply his fun, affectionate older sister. The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. The foundational facts of his identity, his parents, his birthday stories, his childhood memories were suddenly transformed into a meticulously staged theatrical performance. The line between his real life and a Hollywood plotline had completely dissolved. Yet despite the sudden, earth-shattering nature of the phone call from Time magazine, Jack proved to be remarkably resilient. Instead of spiraling into public breakdown or letting the scandal consume his career, he absorbed the shock quietly. He asked the magazine to withhold the story out of respect for his living family members, though the truth eventually found its way into the public eye. Jack later reflected that by the time he discovered the truth, he was emotionally mature enough to process it. He felt no anger toward his mother or grandmother. Instead, he expressed profound gratitude, viewing their deceptive conspiracy as an act of absolute love and sacrifice designed to give him a stable, loving home rather than sending him to an orphanage or raising him under the toxic shadow of 1930s social shame. This phone call in August 1974 became the ultimate epicenter of Jack Nicholson's life story, drawing his entire past and future into a massive network of hidden family secrets. But how could an ordinary working-class family in New Jersey successfully maintain a lie of this magnitude for nearly 4 decades without a single leak or slip-up? On April 22, 1937, in Neptune City, New Jersey, a baby boy entered the world inside a small local hospital. Outside, America was slowly clawing its way out of the Great Depression, a time when small-town values were strict, unyielding, and enforced by sharp gossip. Inside the delivery room, 17-year-old June Frances Nicholson looked at her newborn son. June was a vibrant, ambitious teenager who dreamed of making it big as a professional dancer and showgirl. But instead of celebrating a new life, the room was heavy with dread. In the late 1930s, becoming an unmarried teenage mother was considered an irredeemable family disgrace. A scandal like that could ruin a young woman's career prospects, destroy a working-class family's social standing, and tag the child with a permanent social stigma. Standing in the hospital room was Ethel May Nicholson, June's mother. Ethel May was a formidable, resourceful woman who ran a beauty parlor out of her home. She saw the crisis clearly and understood the severe consequences if the truth got out to the neighbors. Sending June away to a home for unwed mothers or putting the baby up for adoption was off the table. Ethel May wanted to keep her grandson, but she knew the kid would stand no chance if raised under the toxic glare of small-town judgment. Right then and there, inside the quiet hospital room, Ethel May formulated a daring, airtight plan to fabricate a brand new reality. She looked at her frightened teenage daughter and laid down the law that would govern their lives for the next 4 decades. This baby isn't your son anymore, June. He's your little brother, and no one outside this house ever hears a different story. With that single decree, the deception began. Official records were carefully managed, and the family narrative was locked down completely. When Ethel May walked out into the Neptune City community carrying the newborn infant, she proudly announced to neighbors and friends that she had given birth to her own late-in-life baby boy. They named him John Joseph Nicholson, Jr., though everyone quickly shortened it to Jack. The mechanism of this identity swap was executed with remarkable precision. Ethel May assumed the role of Jack's mother, providing the daily care, discipline, and maternal affection he needed. June stepped into the background role of the fun, stylish older sister. To complete the illusion, John Nicholson, Ethel May's husband, a quiet man who struggled with alcoholism, was cast as Jack's father, even though he had little direct involvement in the boy's upbringing. Growing up throughout the 1940s, young Jack never suspected a thing. His childhood environment felt totally normal, warm and secure. He adored Ethel May, running to her whenever he got hurt or needed guidance. He viewed June not as an authoritative parent, but as a glamorous, free-spirited elder sister who lived in a world of jazz music, colorful dresses, and dreams of the big city. When June moved to Los Angeles to pursue her career in show business, Jack missed her the way any young boy would miss a cool older sibling who occasionally sent home exciting postcards from California. Inside the Nicholson household, the lie was guarded like a state secret. Extended family members, aunts, and close acquaintances were all brought into the fold, bound by an unspoken oath of silence. Whenever relatives gathered for holidays, everyone played their assigned roles without breaking character. No slip-ups occurred. No old photo albums were left out. Every potential clue that could point to June's teenage pregnancy was systematically erased or buried. This masterfully constructed fake reality shielded Jack entirely from the cruel prejudices of 1930s and 1940s society. He grew up confident, sharp-witted, and bold, totally unaware that the foundation of his upbringing was a carefully choreographed theatrical production. By the time Jack graduated from Manasquan High School in 1954, he was ready to step out into the wider world. He decided to head west to Los Angeles, moving in with the woman he believed was his supportive older sister, June. Little did he know he was moving closer to the heart of the secret that would eventually rewrite his entire life. In 1954, 17-year-old Jack Nicholson stepped off the bus in Los Angeles, moving straight into the apartment of June Frances Nicholson, the woman he still firmly believed was his stylish older sister. To get a foot in the door of the film business, Jack landed an entry-level job running office errands at the MGM animation department. While he chased acting classes, took minor stage roles, and honed his iconic toothy grin, June was his biggest fan, quietly supporting his Hollywood ambitions with unconditional warmth. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, Jack ground his way through low-budget Roger Corman films, learning the mechanics of filmmaking while waiting for his big break. June watched from the sidelines as he poured his soul into acting, proud of every small victory. But behind her loving smiles, June was carrying a crushing physical and emotional weight. In the early 1960s, June was diagnosed with cancer. As her health rapidly deteriorated, the silence surrounding Jack's true identity grew increasingly heavy. June spent her final days watching the young man she had birthed and then given away to her own mother struggle to make a name for himself in Hollywood. Yet bound by the pact made in a New Jersey hospital room 26 years earlier, she refused to break character. In 1963, June passed away at the age of 44. Jack grieved deeply for the fun, vibrant sister who had always backed his dreams, completely unaware that he had just buried his biological mother. 7 years later, in 1970, the second anchor of the lie fell. Ethel May Nicholson, the formidable matriarch whom Jack had loved as his mother his entire life, passed away. With her death, the two women who had engineered the false reality had taken the secret to their graves. The thread of truth was broken, buried beneath 6 feet of earth in New Jersey cemeteries. Tragically, this period of immense personal loss coincided with Jack's explosive rise to international stardom. In 1969, his scene-stealing performance as the alcoholic lawyer George Hansen in Easy Rider earned him his first Academy Award nomination. A year later, in 1970, he starred in 5 Easy Pieces, delivering a raw, generational performance that solidified him as the quintessential rebel of American cinema. Whenever interviewers asked about his upbringing, Jack spoke passionately about his mother Ethel May and his sister June, praising them for giving him the freedom and love to pursue his art. Every tribute he offered on national television or in major print magazines was a heartbreaking historical misunderstanding. He was building an iconic career and honoring his family, entirely unaware that his emotional foundation was built on an elaborate fiction. During a break on a film set in the early 1970s, as Jack openly reminisced to a close crew member about how much he missed the maternal guidance of Ethel May and the sisterly support of June, a friend gently asked if he ever wished they were still around to see his massive success. Jack paused, his eyes narrowing with deep reflection, and replied, "Every single day. Everything I am on that screen I owe to the way those 2 women raised me." The ultimate tragedy lay in that precise timing. At the exact moment Jack Nicholson reached the peak of global fame, the only human beings who held the key to his origins were gone. Yet fate was preparing a twist so eerie and ironic that it bordered on the supernatural. The very film project that would push his star power into the stratosphere was about to mirror the hidden nightmare of his own family bloodline in ways he could never have imagined. In 1974, Jack Nicholson stood at the center of the cinematic world with Roman Polanski's masterpiece Chinatown, playing the sharp-witted private investigator Jake Gittes. Jack spent the narrative untangling a dark, deeply buried maze of corruption and family secrets in 1930s Los Angeles. The emotional climax of the film hinges on an iconic explosive scene inside a dimly lit room. Gittes corners Evelyn Mulwray, played by Faye Dunaway, repeatedly slapping her and demanding to know the true identity of a young girl she is hiding. Under intense pressure, Evelyn breaks down in tears, screaming a revelation that sends chills down the audience's spine. "She's my daughter, she's my sister, she's my daughter and my sister." Audiences in theaters across America gasped at the horrifying twist of hidden incest and buried lineage. But for Jack, that script was far more than just a brilliant piece of writing. It was an uncanny, almost supernatural mirror held up to his own life, waiting for the right moment to reflect his reality back at him. While Chinatown was dominating box offices and garnering critical acclaim, the research team at Time magazine made their fateful call to Jack, laying out official state documents indicating that June was his mother and Ethel May was his grandmother. Initial denial quickly gave way to a cold, gnawing anxiety. Jack needed to know for certain. Knowing that both June and Ethel May were in their graves, he picked up the phone to reach out to the only family members left who could give him a straight answer: his Aunt Lorraine and Shorty, the man who had been married to June. When Shorty answered the phone, Jack didn't bother with small talk. His voice was steady, but the question was sharp and direct. He asked Shorty to tell him man to man if the journalists at Time were telling the truth. On the other end of the line, the heavy silence spoke volumes before Shorty could even formulate a sentence. Overwhelmed with emotion, Shorty broke down, choked back tears, and finally confirmed what the family had kept hidden for 37 years. During that emotional call, Shorty gently laid down the truth that shattered Jack's past. "Jack, it was June. June was your mother. We swore never to tell you, but it's the truth." Shortly after, Lorraine took the phone and filled in the remaining painful pieces. She explained how June had been only 17, scared and trying to build a career when she got pregnant. She told him about how Ethel May stepped in to take the burden, creating a protective wall around him so he could grow up without shame or judgment in 1930s New Jersey. Hearing the truth confirmed by the very people who had loved and raised him brought a strange, heavy sense of clarity. The line Faye Dunaway screamed in Chinatown suddenly echoed through his head with horrifying personal weight. Art had literally foreshadowed his life. June was his sister and she was his mother. The psychological impact of discovering that your entire life was built on a staged performance would have emotionally dismantled most people. Overnight, his childhood memories had to be reprocessed through a brand new lens. Every interaction he remembered with June, her visits, her gifts, her pride in his early acting classes, was not just the affection of a cool older sister. It was the quiet, ache-filled devotion of a mother who was forced to act like a stranger to her own son. Yet Jack remained remarkably composed. He recognized that the lie was created not out of malice or deceit, but out of absolute protective love during an unforgiving era. He accepted the hard reality without bitterness toward the women who had raised him. However, as news of the Time magazine discovery began to ripple out into the public domain, the media machine caught scent of an even bigger story. Hollywood tabloids and press outlets began aggressively digging into the mystery, asking a question that the family secret had never fully answered. If June was his mother, who was the real father. Faced with a fresh wave of public intrusion, Jack Nicholson made a striking, unexpected choice that would define how he handled his origin story forever. After the shocking revelation that June was his mother and Ethel May was his grandmother swept through Hollywood, the media machine immediately turned its spotlight onto a brand new target. Reporters, tabloids, and celebrity biographers zeroed in on a single burning question that would follow Jack Nicholson for the next half-century. Who was his biological father? As the story made headlines across the country, men from June's past began stepping out of the shadows. The most vocal and persistent among them was Donald Fursillo, a former big band musician and performer known as Don Fursillo Rose. Fursillo claimed that he had secretly married 17-year-old June in 1936 in Maryland shortly before she discovered she was pregnant with Jack. However, because Fursillo was already legally married to another woman at the time, the marriage was bigamous and quickly dissolved. Fursillo publicly insisted that he was Jack's true biological father, giving endless press interviews and eventually publishing a book detailing his relationship with June. He repeatedly issued public pleas begging Jack to take a simple DNA test to confirm the biological link once and for all. Another compelling theory pointed toward Eddie King-born Edgar Kirschfeld, a charismatic dance partner and manager who had worked closely with June during her showgirl days in New Jersey. Friends from June's youth recalled their close bond, leading many biographers to speculate that King held the key to Jack's bloodline. Yet amid the circus of public speculation, book deals, and genetic science, Jack Nicholson drew a firm, unbreakable line in the sand. He flatly refused every request to perform a DNA test. He declined to issue press statements validating any of the claimants, completely freezing out media inquiries regarding his paternity. He watched as Don Fursillo campaigned for recognition for over 2 decades, remaining steadfast in his absolute silence until Fursillo passed away in 1998 without ever receiving a single word of confirmation or a single drop of blood for testing. When a persistent interviewer once cornered Jack, pushing him on why he wouldn't simply agree to a quick medical test to put the decades-long speculation to rest forever, Jack shut down the discussion with a cold, razor-sharp response. "I don't need a test to tell me who my family is. The people who raised me are my family, the rest is just noise." That uncompromising stance was not born out of fear or stubbornness. It was a deliberate, deeply considered choice rooted in psychological survival and profound respect for the women who had died protecting him. Jack understood that taking a DNA test would surrender his family's memory to public tabloid consumption. Ethel May and June had sacrificed their own peace of mind and lived a 37-year lie to shield him from social shame, give him a stable home, and foster his independence. To Jack, allowing a stranger or a lab report to redefine his identity would betray the immense sacrifice those 2 women had made. By refusing to acknowledge any alleged biological father, Jack asserted total control over his own narrative. He decided that fatherhood was defined by presence, sacrifice, and care, not by a biological contribution from a man who was absent during his childhood. He chose to honor Ethel May as the mother who held him, June as the mother who gave him life, and no one else. For 52 years, Jack kept that shield firmly in place. He left the question of his father unanswered, letting the world speculate while he kept his true personal boundary completely intact. This absolute silence regarding his origins was far more than just a defense mechanism against intrusive reporters. It became the foundational cornerstone of his personal philosophy, shaping the fiercely guarded, enigmatic lifestyle that would define his later years away from the Hollywood spotlight. By 2026, at 89 years old, Jack Nicholson has long since left the dazzling lights of Hollywood far behind. His last screen appearance was in 2010, marking the end of a legendary career that spanned over 5 decades, 12 Academy Award nominations, and 3 Oscar wins. In an industry where aging icons often struggle to remain relevant, endlessly appearing on talk shows or chasing late-career cameos, Jack chose a completely different path: total, unyielding retirement. His retreat from the public eye was not marked by a bitter press conference or a dramatic retirement tour. Instead, he simply stopped taking calls from studio executives and quietly closed his front door atop Mulholland Drive. Over the years, director friends, producers, and streaming giants kept sending scripts to his house, offering astronomical sums just to get the iconic actor back on set for one last memorable performance. When his close friend and longtime courtside basketball companion, record executive Lou Adler, visited him at his hilltop home to ask why he turned down yet another major movie offer, Jack looked out at his lush garden, smiled his trademark slow smile, and delivered a simple, sharp answer that explained his entire post-Hollywood life. "Do you know what I did today, Lou? I sat under a tree and I read a book." That brief response captured a profound psychological transformation. For a man whose entire life began with a grand theatrical illusion, a 40-year lie staged by the people he loved most, the endless acting on film sets had finally lost its pull. He no longer needed the roar of movie theater crowds, the flash of red carpet photography, or the validation of industry awards to feel whole. By holding his absolute silence on his father's identity and shutting down media intrusion for over half a century, Jack successfully protected his inner peace. He realized early on that the public, the press, and the Hollywood machine would consume every detail of his private life if he allowed them to. His refusal to take DNA tests, his choice never to capitalize on his family's scandal, and his decision to step away from acting were all part of the same lifelong philosophy: absolute control over his own narrative. Impenetrable silence was never a sign of weakness or cowardice for Jack Nicholson. It was his ultimate weapon. It allowed him to shield the sacred memory of June and Ethel May, keeping their loving sacrifice intact while preventing tabloids from turning his family trauma into cheap entertainment. Living quietly in his 80s, surrounded by his personal art collection and the peaceful shade of his garden, Jack achieved what so many Hollywood legends failed to find: authentic serenity. He didn't let a shocking family secret destroy his identity, nor did he let global fame consume his humanity. In the end, the story of Jack Nicholson is not just about a movie star who played charming rebels on the big screen. It is the story of a man who discovered that his life was built on a fiction, accepted the truth with grace, and used the power of silence to master his own destiny, proving that sometimes the ultimate victory over a chaotic world is simply sitting beneath a tree completely at peace with who you are.